It's midnight, and while the rest of the world sleeps, you're just hitting your stride because it's finally quiet enough to focus. Then, when you're ready to rest, your mind won't shut off. Or maybe you did go to bed early, but you still wake up exhausted after another restless night. Now you're running on fumes, and everything that relies on routine or follow through feels harder than it should. Sleep challenges and ADHD often go hand in hand because ADHD doesn't just affect attention, but also how your brain regulates arousal, timing, and recovery. Whether your circadian rhythm runs late or medication keeps you wired, poor sleep creates a domino effect. Focus slips, routines fall apart, and everything feels harder the next day. But don't worry. There are ways to improve your sleep hygiene. In this episode, we'll break down how ADHD affects sleep, and I'll share the top 5 science-backed strategies to help you improve for more consistent, restorative rest starting tonight. This is ADHD where we talk about everyday life and ADHD. I'm your host, Dr. J. I'm a licensed psychologist who works with those with ADHD. If you're tired of being tired, don't sleep on this episode. The ties between sleep issues and ADHD are actually pretty well documented. Data shows insomnia and other sleep disorders have a comorbid occurrence with ADHD. Studies indicate that 30% of children and 60 to 80% of adults with ADHD have symptoms of sleep disorders, such as daytime sleepiness, insomnia, delayed sleep phase syndrome, fractured sleep, and also restless leg syndrome, for example. Now let's take a look at how sleep trouble shows up in people with ADHD. Insomnia is one of the most frequently reported sleep complaints among those with ADHD. This includes difficulty falling asleep, staying asleep, or waking too early and feeling unrefreshed. There are a few reasons why insomnia is so common in ADHD. One of those is racing thoughts at night. Many people with ADHD describe their brains as finally waking up when the world gets quiet. Next is difficulty downshifting. ADHD brains often struggle with transitions, including the transition from wakefulness to sleep. And lastly, hyperarousal. ADHD is associated with increased physiological and cognitive arousal, which works directly against sleep onset. Next, let's look at restless leg syndrome, or RLS. RLS occurs more frequently in people with ADHD than the general population. It's characterized by uncomfortable leg sensations, may create an urge to move, especially at night, and interferes with sleep onset and continuity. One key link between ADHD and RLS is dopamine dysregulation. Dopamine plays a critical role in both attention regulation and motor control, and abnormalities in dopamine pathways has been implicated in both conditions. Even if you manage to fall asleep, staying asleep is a whole nother battle. People with ADHD experience more frequent nighttime awakenings and lighter, more fragmented sleep. Part of this is hyperactivity. Your brain and body don't fully power down, but often it's the comorbid conditions like anxiety, depression, or substance use disorders that are doing the heavy lifting here. Next is circadian rhythm sleep disorders. ADHD is strongly associated with disruptions in the body's internal clock. People with ADHD are significantly more likely to experience delayed sleep-wake phase disorder, meaning their natural sleep window occurs much later than is socially expected. Waking up early may feel physically painful, and your brain may not function best early in the day. Next is excessive daytime sleepiness. Some people with ADHD don't just struggle with sleep, they struggle to stay awake. Excessive daytime sleepiness in ADHD has been linked to poor nighttime sleep quality, dysregulation of arousal systems, and co-occurring depression. In ADHD, the brain often struggles to regulate alertness, leading to oscillations between underarousal, so like fatigue or brain fog, and overarousal, which looks like restlessness or hyperfocus. It's hard enough to navigate the world with a neurodivergent brain. Running on poor sleep amplifies core ADHD challenges in predictable and often demoralizing ways. When it comes to focus and attention, sleep deprivation directly impairs sustained attention, working memory, and processing speed. For people with ADHD, this means increased distractibility, more frequent mind wandering, and intensified brain fog. So here's an example scenario that's related to work. You sit down to answer emails in the morning, already exhausted. You reread the same message 3 times, open 5 tabs just to check something, and suddenly an hour is gone. The shame creeps in. Why can't I focus like everyone else? In reality, your brain is operating without the restorative fuel that it needs to function. Now let's look at emotional regulation. Sleep and emotional regulation are tightly connected. When sleep is poor, the brain's ability to modulate emotional responses weakens. In ADHD, this often shows up as irritability, lower frustration tolerance, or feeling easily overwhelmed or emotionally reactive. Here's an example related to relationships. Your partner asks a neutral question. Did you remember to call the plumber? And it lands like criticism. You snap, feel misunderstood, and later feel guilty. Poor sleep has lowered your emotional buffer, making it harder to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. Next is impulsivity and self-regulation. When sleep is disrupted, maintaining routines and measured behavior becomes significantly harder. This can impact eating habits, exercise consistency, substance abuse, and spending behaviors. So here's an example related to health behaviors. After a night of poor sleep, cooking feels impossible. You skip breakfast, grab sugary snacks, cancel your workout, and promise yourself that you'll reset tomorrow. Unfortunately, tomorrow starts with even less energy, and the cycle continues. The negative effects of poor sleep pile up fast and create a vicious cycle that can be hard to break. Luckily, everyone needs sleep to function, so there are plenty of proven actions for getting a better night's rest. Here are the top 5 science-backed strategies with a couple extra from me sprinkled in. Because sleep difficulties in ADHD are driven by neurobiology, circadian rhythm differences, and co-occurring conditions, treatment works best when it's multimodal rather than one size fits all. The goal is not perfect sleep hygiene or rigid routines, but better alignment between your brain, your body, and your environment. The first thing I'm going to talk about is cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI. CBTI is considered the first-line evidence-based treatment for chronic insomnia, including for people with ADHD. CBTI focuses on reducing sleep-related anxiety, rebuilding your trust in your body's ability to sleep, restructuring unhelpful beliefs, so things like, if I don't get 8 hours of sleep, tomorrow is ruined, and stabilizing sleep patterns without solely relying on medication. Research suggests CBTI can improve sleep efficiency, reduce nighttime awakenings, and improve daytime functioning, even for those with ADHD symptoms present. Importantly, CBTI is not about forcing sleep. It teaches the nervous system to settle into rest. The second thing I'm going to mention is medication timing and optimization. Medication can either support or sabotage sleep depending on how it's used. Here are some helpful strategies. The first is adjusting stimulant timing to avoid evening activation. You may also want to consider long-acting versus short-acting formulations. I found that evaluating whether rebound effects are contributing to nighttime restlessness is helpful, and also treating co-occurring conditions like anxiety or depression if they're present. This should all be done collaboratively with your prescribing provider. The third thing I'm going to talk about is supporting your circadian rhythm rather than fighting against it. For people with delayed sleep-wake phase disorder, this issue is often about timing, not sleeping ability. So here are a couple evidence-based strategies. The first thing is getting morning light exposure, ideally within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking. You also want consistent wake times, even after poor sleep. That means that even if you went to bed at 3 a.m., if your routine is to wake up at 7 a.m., I'm gonna need you to get up. Also, reducing bright light exposure late at night can be really helpful. Research suggests that shifting circadian rhythms gradually, rather than forcing early bedtimes, leads to better long-term outcomes. Number 4 is managing hyperarousal at night. ADHD brains often struggle with downshifting, especially when external demands finally stop. So here are a few helpful ideas. You may want some body-based calming strategies, so things like progressive muscle relaxation or slow, deep breathing. We actually have a free app called ADHD Unstuck that can walk you through some calming exercises. The next thing to mention here is cognitive offloading. This is basically writing down your thoughts before bed. No judgment, just brain dump. I also recommend low stimulation wind down routines. That may mean no screens for you. So find a book, do a puzzle, knit, color, whatever you choose, it just needs to be low stim. You may also want to consider gentle sensory input. So this can be things like weighted blankets or consistent sound. Many of my patients will use a white noise machine because they often can do brown noise, chirping sounds, crashing waves, etc. And some people find this very soothing. The goal is not to quiet the mind completely, but to signal safety to your nervous system. The 5th recommendation is to address co-occurring conditions. Sleep problems rarely exist in isolation. In ADHD, they often overlap with anxiety disorders, depression, other mood disorders, or substance use. Treating these conditions can significantly improve sleep quality. For example, anxiety treatment may reduce nighttime rumination. Depression treatment may reduce hypersomnia or early awakenings. Reducing alcohol can improve REM sleep and sleep continuity. Ignoring co-occurring diagnoses often limits how effective sleep interventions can be. Let's talk about daytime practices that can protect sleep. So what happens during the day strongly shapes what happens at night. So here are some sleep protective habits. The first one I'm going to mention is regular movement, especially earlier in the day. You also want to eat enough protein and balanced meals to support dopamine regulation. Please think about your caffeine use and be strategic. You want to have it earlier in the day, not later. And also think about pacing your energy to avoid later day crashes. And lastly here, practicing self-compassion. This is clinically important. It's not optional. Chronic sleep problems often come with shame. Why can't I just go to bed? Everyone else seems to manage this. I'm bad at adulting. Self-criticism increases physiological arousal, which makes sleep worse. Research consistently shows that self-compassion improves emotion regulation and reduces stress. Both of these support better sleep. Improving sleep with ADHD is rarely about fixing one habit. It's about understanding your nervous system, supporting your circadian rhythm, reducing shame, building strategies that respect how your brain actually works. Better sleep won't cure ADHD, but it can make ADHD far more manageable. And that alone can change how daily life feels. Sleep is key to brain function. Even if it feels productive or fun to push past your sleep routine, you're sacrificing deep, restorative rest, which you especially need to address executive function and emotion regulation challenges associated with ADHD. Don't beat yourself up if you fall off your schedule or struggle to fall asleep. Just do your best. As I always say, try, tweak, repeat. That's it for this episode of ADHD And. If you found this episode helpful, check out our episode on ADHD and caffeine, where I explain the effects of caffeine and how to manage its intake. Thanks so much for joining me. Make sure to subscribe for more ADHD resources and support like this.